And it's not very live, is it? Loud. Perhaps it's louder with you than it is with me. But anyway, we'll go on an act of faith. You can see that the camera is a little cloudy this morning. It shouldn't be, but it went cloudy a couple of days ago, and I've tried to fix it since. In fact, I've tried to fix a whole host of things, and I've come to the conclusion that we oldies, yeah, I'm old. Wish I wasn't, but there we are. I'm reasonably satisfied with my lot and the way of life and style of life I have, the friends I have, the companions I have, the work colleagues I have. There's still a great deal of goodness left in the world. But computerization has taken over. And there are a whole bunch of busy little graduates in basements all across the world, fizzing away, inventing new things, slapping themselves on the back, saying what a jolly good job they've done, how clever they are, how smart they are. Well, I think we need to rein in some of this development, because they may be slapping themselves on the back, and maybe our grandchildren are whooping with glee with the latest game set to be turned out. But I find I'm becoming bemused by things that I would have described myself as computer literate. I have real difficulty now understanding the language, but knowing where to go next. Perhaps that resonates with some of you. Others undoubtedly are saying, hold fast. He'd hold back progress. I don't think I would hold back progress. I would hold back, to some extent, the advancement and development of computerization. It's all going a wee bit too fast. It's all having things which are supposed to help us in our daily lives, which you simply can't use. And that is not serving either a marketplace, a community, or generally civil society. It needs somebody to say it. So I'm saying it. It needs somebody to come up with an alternative. Well, I'm not yet, but I'm being driven to find one or suggest one. because I'm suffering badly from not being able to understand and to use some modern appliances. I was amongst those who initially took television out of 100 gadgets, huge cameras, big editing machines. I was among those, and I don't want you to get the idea that I was a pioneer. I wasn't. But I was among those who developed, in this particular industry, television, a system that would allow an individual to sit down at a table with a laptop and with broadband and become a broadcaster. Just as powerful, just as versatile as the BBC. That was a big step forward. A big step forward for mankind. It was an advancement that unfettered hundreds of thousands who wanted to make their own voice heard, who had a point to make, who wanted to share a joke. And it was excellent. It was excellent. We've been broadcasting for almost 3 years now at the White Hart, and here as the guests of Declan, wonderful Declan, at the Black Horse. So we were broadcasting a long time before that. I started Mirador sitting with my phone outside Cafe Nero, doing a little editorial, chatting to the odd person who went by and got the hour of 6 o'clock in the morning about their views on the day. It's very simple, very straightforward. And very few problems. In the last 6 months, we have not had a trouble-free week with the technology that allows us to run this television station here in Lewis, here in the Black Horse. It isn't rocket science, or shouldn't be. And yet, it's so complicated that when it breaks down, I don't know how to fix it. I have 2 computers here. One is a something pad. Even forgotten to know that. Which I'm using at the moment. Another is a laptop. It's not that sophisticated. It's operable. I do and can use it. But this morning, what normally is a standard procedure of switching the thing on, and it automatically finds the satellite, which permits broadcasting to you, wherever you may be. It needs it automatically finds the internet, and away we go. This morning, it won't pick an internet. It won't select the one that we normally use, and I don't know what to do about it. And that sort of thing shouldn't happen to older people. It's an age-old thing, isn't it? The old are always moaning about what the youth are being dealt, and the young are always moaning about the old, and how they think that God owes them a living. The fact of the matter is that if we're going to improve the quality of the services, the care and attention given to us, provided for us rather than given, by those who develop these things, we have to accept that maybe we should be providing for both sectors of our society, the old and the young. Oh, okay. The young may not want to travel along in an old coal hopper, but I would give anything for a Model T, and certainly my first car, an Austin 7, for all the tea in China now. And yet the young would probably be rejected as being very old technology. Yeah, it is. It was. But it was a beautiful thing to look at. And it got you there. Nowadays, youngsters can't wait to get behind the wheel of a car that will do 200 miles an hour, 300 miles an hour. Well, good luck to them. And I'm not advocating saying no, you can't have cars like that. What I'm saying is, let us remember those people who can't handle, don't want to handle, find confused by a super duper car. and not just rush into producing these things on the basis of, oh, we've done some market surveys. We've done research, and we know that people want these things. Well, they don't, not all of them. So surely it is sensible from an economic point of view to keep a very close eye on older products, older people. No? No. I get flooded on my computer with so many messages. I can't actually go back. If I don't catch them the first time, I can't go back and see them a second time because I don't know which message system they came in on. Well, okay, you shouldn't have been so daft as to have 4 or 5 of these things. It would be your response. But I think it behooves us to only have one phone which does one thing. And we keeps us sane in the process. And since we're on this topic, let's get into a bit of the nitty-gritty. Much is made of the fact that a 16-year-old or a 17-year-old can perform at incredible levels. We see it in sport all the time. Excuse me. Oh dear. A morning cough. What was that saying? Yes. A youngster can see the benefits of going for a high-priced job or demanding way over his worth because it fills his pockets with cash to buy things on the consumer goods market. But it is interesting, and you hear the commentators when watching a football match to say this kid has got a nice swerve, a nice kick, a nice punch, or whatever. Wait until he gets the experience. And that's true of life. You need experience of life to apply what you learn as you go along the way sensibly and properly. If you don't have that, you can't put your knowledge and awareness into context. And making mistakes out of raw ignorance is no excuse. I have formulated. I've shown a trailer. I haven't actually finished producing it yet. Called The Return of the Triffids. Now, in case any of you do not know who the Triffids are or where, the Triffids were a plant created in the 1950s. Now, in reality, they were created by the leading author of the time, the leading sci-fi author of the time, a guy called John Wyndham. He had a right turn of phrase. Believe me, the book kept me on the edge of my seat. And books don't often keep me on the edge of my seat. But essentially, the story of the day of the Triffids is that the Triffids, which, because they were part animal and part mineral, part vegetable, were put to use producing oil. And they were located in groves with a fear lashed around, harmless and producing much needed oil for mankind. One night, there is a starburst, not related, as they say, a starburst. Everybody was blinded. That meant they put the Triffids on equal terms with mankind. Well, the Triffids took over because they were used to dealing in the dark. They used little radar sensors which had developed over the years. And they had a field day. And eventually, mankind was reduced to a captive race. Now, the people that were able to form some sort of resistance were the people that had been undergoing operations the night that the starburst took place. And so they could see and saw with horror what was happening with the Triffids taking over the earth, all resistance folding beneath them. And so Earth was conquered by this alien race, which it had previously subjugated. The humankind was enslaved. However, those that had kept their sight with the indomitable spirit of the human race fought back. But only after a decade did they manage to gain any headway whatsoever. And that was the situation with the Triffids. Most people thought that the Triffids were defeated, but they weren't. They were put back into the highways and the byways, where they were able to disguise themselves because they were plants. And that's where they're sitting today. You probably have seen a Triffid 1,000 times and pay no attention to him because he's just a normal plant, which you've got used to. The Triffids are waiting their time. They are waiting to take over again because they have an ambition to subjugate mankind. And what they see as our weakness is the computer. They are concerned, not concerned, concern is the wrong word. They are quietly rejoicing every time we do something stupid with the computer. For example, we replicate in 1,000 different ways the fact that we've now taken away the banking rights to small communities. There's only one bank left in Lewis. There are several other civil service that we have taken for granted. The Triffids recognize that we now rely upon sorry, I just had a little message come across the top. My concentration isn't all that it might be, or what it was years ago. The Triffids are waiting for us. Well, I was giving an example of how the banks have moved out and insist that we all use computers. And already there are instances of misuse. There are instances where people can't use them, don't know how to use them. And so the banking sector, far from helping itself, is getting itself into trouble because it's got a whole new range of customer that it doesn't understand. And it's doing nothing except earning vast profits. Lloyd's last year had a profit of £2 billion. Several of the other banks were not far short. And a few people were lining their pockets with some of this ill-gained lucre. We can't tolerate this. The philosophy of the banks, and I guess the government at this stage, is keep going long enough, and everybody will be able to bank online. Don't bank on it. We should not make a basic assumption that everybody will or can or wants to bank online. But the basic services have been removed. Even more frightening is that local government are using almost only computer-generated material. Check out online. There's nothing wrong with having online, but not as the total means of communication. That is not on. And particularly since local governments are now being seriously suspected of not working in the interest of their community. There are lots of things that need putting right, not least of which is getting the accounts audited before we give them another lot. In April, your council tax will go up. It'll be due for payment. The local council has said quite clearly, we're going to raise your tax to the limits that we're permitted to under the law. But what have you spent our last lot on? We haven't had time yet. We haven't had time to put our accounts together. God, you've got bureaucrats coming out of your ears. You haven't had time. Okay. Perhaps you haven't had time this past year before we give you some more to spend. But you haven't filed even draft accounts. In other words, not one single sheet of paper has shown where our money went. But you want more. You haven't done that for 4 years. And you say what wonderful things you're doing. Well, these wonderful things take money. I quite understand that. I quite understand that they take money. But are you paying for them? Or are you speculating? You know, it's all very well to say, well, councils can't really step out of line, can they? Why not? It's a number of years ago now that councils have the right to take your tax and mine and invest it to try and get a return for the community. Well, is I think it's Bradford City Council saw a get rich quick scheme, and they invested in a mine in British Columbia, a diamond mine, and they put a substantial amount of money, bought shares. To cut a long story short, it turned out that this mine, wine on the brain, oh yes, this mine was invested in a shop that sold bedclothes. By that time, there was no way of getting it back. So there was no safeguard, you see. And there's no safeguard here. Now, we had James McCleary on, who is one of your candidates. Let's mention both um, people. There's James McCleary and the incumbent, Maria Crawford. Is that correct? Yeah. And James McCleary, said he didn't know, or he was excluded. To half a dozen questions that Stuart Dolby and I asked him. Now, that is a level of politician. And I don't misunderstand. I'm not saying that James McCleary is a poor politician. It's just no, he's not a poor politician. He's a very nice man, actually. But the fact of the matter is, they have something called the scrutiny committee. What they is they look at themselves. It's not an external group. They look at themselves to see whether they're misspending. Well, they're not. They're not checking thoroughly enough, and it's not good enough. It really isn't good enough. There are lots of things. I personally am very down on the local administration. So please take some of what I say with a pinch of salt. They're not all ogres. You won't walk in and see a howling mob. But there are weaknesses in our system, which naughty men will try to exploit. And are exploiting. And we've got to have systems that safeguard against that. Our local governance is a mess. Where once we were one of the best governed towns in the whole of the United Kingdom. That's deteriorated, and nobody is trying to put it right. My entire rant this morning has been really that there are some things that are rotten in the state of Denmark, as I say, and we really need a root and branch inspection and a root and branch reform. Now, this is not a political plug at all. It's just that it just so happens that he did it. And Boris Johnson made a speech just before the last election just before he became Prime Minister, in which he said a root and branch examination of the governance system from the House of Lords down to the parish councils needed reform, was not fit for purpose. In other words, the survey work had been done. And so he gets in. He becomes Prime Minister. And we have lockdown. So nothing is done, and because of lockdown, he's turfed out. All right. I bear no brief necessarily for Boris Johnson. I think he's very colourful. That's what we need in politicians. We need colourful politicians. But generally speaking, he is a colourful character. And this is by far, in my opinion, the best thing that he ever did, was to do this review, or have this review done, of governance all the way around. I think that somebody, somewhere, should resurrect it and start to apply it before we get ourselves into any more awful bother. Well, I've enjoyed my rant. I don't know if anybody else has, but I'll head on to people flash up on the screen. I can't actually respond to you today, because of the nonsense with technology. And I'm broadcasting from the iPad. That's the iPad, and it has limited features. Anyway, there you are. I'm going to leave you. I'm going to leave you for about 15 minutes, and then I will come back for another chat. So, where are we with them? Oh, blow it. We'll. Oh, I know. No, I'm sorry. I'm not going to leave you yet. I am going to there remind you about the pub quiz, because it was, after we kept up the heat, it was extremely well attended. It was a wonderful evening. That was last Sunday. The next one will be the second Sunday in April. One more round of rugby left. And it was excellent rugby the last weekend. It was terrific rugby. And so they'll be showing that last game against France. Now, France, who have been very desultory, really turned it on Saturday against Wales. Yes, against Wales. And played some brilliant rugby. Well worthwhile. Two good games in prospect. And it was very popular on Sunday. Oops. There. The Sunday roast. Yes, indeed. Whole families were out on Sunday. And it gives it a lovely atmosphere. And you're a churchgoer, which I'm vaguely, I used to be lost, but I'm vaguely now. It's nice to go to church and then go to the Black Horse for a Sunday lunch. It's a homely pub. Can't see much of it behind me, I don't think. No, you can't see much behind me. It's a homely pub. It's a nice pub. Sunday lunch. It's a very, very place. The Black Horse. A Sunday lunch. Reminds me of the Bisto kids when I was younger. Bisto, the Ravens. They had 3 children, urchins, and the Bisto kids. Betty Bisto. Bisto. Oh, go back to bed, Keith. Please go back to bed. I don't know. What's that one? Nice and red and fruity. Let's play it out.